Hello, Mindset Recovery friends. I do not have a lot of followers, and I know that many people probably do not see my videos, but I have been keeping track of my progress in recovery for nearly 2 years now. I think probably at least 2 years, because when I first started making videos, I had not yet been successful at staying clean for any length of time. So, if you've seen my videos before, you know that I struggled in addiction for over 35 years, in and out of the rooms of 12 step recovery, multiple fellowships. But in 2019, I moderated to the point where it was a slow downhill trod. And I thought that I would have considered myself a a person. I'm trying to think of the wording, but functional. I consider myself to be a functional addict. I knew that I was using substances against my will, but I had maintained enough moderation over the years that I actually made it 53 years before it got out of control, to the point where I almost died. And at that point, because I had been exposed to the rooms of 12 step recovery, I knew that I needed to commit myself to the program. I knew that I needed to start following suggestions. And I got myself a sponsor, and I did the suggested 90 meetings in 90 days. I was reading literature regularly, which was not something that I was accustomed to do. And I had a sponsor, which I had done before. But I think really what I've seen in recovery now is that I wasn't willing to do everything that was suggested to me. So I pretty much was my own sponsor. Um, but anyway, this time in recovery, I have been following suggestions. I've been going to meetings regularly. I've been helping other addicts. And so at 15 months, completely drug and alcohol free, I made a mistake that a lot of addicts make, and I decided that I could do it, and I decided to drink a beer. So, you know, the good news is that I did not go back out and start getting drunk and getting high and, living a dirty lifestyle again. I was honest with my sponsor, and I told him that I had drank a beer, and much to my chagrin, he said that, I was no longer clean. One's too many, a thousand's never enough, which, we read that in every meeting at NA. So I already knew that. But, one of my problems is that I always considered myself to be different than everybody else. I think a lot of addicts suffer from that. And so I felt like I could drink a beer. I only wanted to drink one beer. I didn't want to get drunk. I didn't plan on telling anybody about it. But then, my spiritual awakening, I have a conscience now, which, before I had seared my conscience to the point where I could always justify doing things that were my will. And so that's what happened there. I said, I'm going to drink a beer, and nobody's going to stop me, and no one's going to know about it, and I'm not going to tell anyone. But then, I started to feel like it was necessary. I felt like my higher power was saying that, yeah, I made it this time, but if I wasn't honest and recommitting myself to the program and talking to my sponsor about it, that, I was on a slippery slope. And I know how I am. I can drink a beer, obviously, and not drink any more for 6 more months. But had I not gotten honest and become accountable to my sponsor and other people in the program, who knows? I might have decided to drink 2 beers the next time. And then my experience with using alcohol and drugs, which NA says that alcohol is a drug, my experience is that, the next time I use a little bit more, and then I can convince myself that, hey, it's not so bad. Didn't have any consequences. So maybe next time I can increase my usage. And my experience with alcohol has been that, all bets are off after I catch an alcohol buzz. So I recommitted myself to the program. My sponsor had been working with me regularly. We were working steps. We have a good relationship. And he did say that I had to, humble myself and pick up another white chip and start the journey again. But that, I didn't lose my recovery. And so I continued to work steps where I was at. Previously, I had always had to go back to the first step whenever I relapsed. But this time, you know, I had a one use relapse and it was one beer. And so he didn't feel it was necessary for me to start over again for whatever reason. I would venture to guess that it's probably because he thought that it would drive me away, which it probably would have. But, I had to humble myself. I had to get up in front of other addicts and admit that I was starting the journey again. And so it's been successful for me. My recovery has continued. I still, I told him the other day when we were riding around, I said, as far as I'm concerned, I have 2 years of recovery. I haven't been drunk or high. And, he's a real stickler in NA. He's been in the program for 11 years. He hasn't drank one beer at any point during that time. I'm sure that he had some relapses in the beginning, like a lot of people do. There are people who are one chip wonders who get involved in the program and they jump in head first and they get plugged in and they never use again. And that's awesome. But it wasn't my story. So I had gotten to the point after I had my stroke where I knew that I needed to get clean and sober because I almost died as a direct use of tearing my body down from using regularly. My drug of choice was raising my blood pressure. I was extremely overweight. I was drinking, which also messes with your blood pressure. And then I was pouring drugs on top of it that were even increasing my blood pressure more and having a lot of risk factors for stroke. I had a stroke. So, I immediately had to start change my diet, drastically. I, reversed my type 2 diabetes. I normalized my blood pressure. I stopped using drugs and alcohol. But it took me about 2 years of making it about 30 days at a time and then using once. So I got into a pattern of that. And, I had to break that pattern. And I decided that I was going to go 60 days. And then I made it 60 days. I used one time again, drank one beer, and was proud of myself. And that was over 2 years ago. And I, told my sponsor, I was like, hey, I drank a beer. And then he said, you got to pick up a white chip. And at that time, I was not very well steeped in the program. And so I decided that if I was going to have to pick up a white chip, that I was going to earn it. So I went out and used and got messed up and did multiple drugs and, and then went back in and picked up my white chip. And so then I made it, 15 months and I drank one beer and I was honest with my sponsor. And so when he told me that it was necessary for me to pick up another white chip, I wasn't happy about it. But this time I did not want to go out and use other drugs and get drunk. So I guess I had matured a little bit at that point. And so I have gone without using any substances for 6 more months, but I feel like I still have my recovery, my higher power, and I have a good relationship. Um, I'm also involved in another 12-step program that's based on AA, as NA is, but it's a Christ-centered fellowship called Celebrate Recovery, and I volunteer in that. So I'm doing service work in there. I only go one day a week. I went tonight, picked up 6 months in there also. And, I think that, I don't know what I'm going to do. I haven't made any definite plans, but I like Celebrate Recovery better personally because, in NA, it's the God of your understanding, and the God of my understanding is the God of the Bible. But you're discouraged from kind of speaking about that in meetings because, some people have a lot of church hurts and maybe they had bad relationships in their past with the God of their childhood. And so, people are encouraged to have a God of their own understanding. that has attributes of being kind and loving and caring about you and taking care of you, which, for me, the God of my understanding does all that. But I suppose that you could have a different interpretation of your God, and still the steps can work for you because it is a spiritual program, not a religious one. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the reason that I like Celebrate Recovery is because it's Christ centered and we all have the same higher power. And then it's the steps of AA, but then it's their biblical comparisons. So AA is generally accepted as having been a Christian based on the Bible. Excuse me, I have the hiccups. Been based on the Bible. And Celebrate Recovery just capitalizes on that. And then people are Christians that go there, and we don't identify ourselves as alcoholics or addicts like they do in the other 12-step programs. And I understand why the other programs do it that way, because we don't want to forget, that is one of our defects, that we've the thing that's tripped us up was going back over and over to whatever our drug of choice was, be it alcohol or whatever. So in Celebrate Recovery, we identify as grateful believers in Jesus Christ whose past struggles have been with, insert what your problem is there: alcohol, drugs, porn, sex, overeating, codependency, whatever it is. So like in NA, it's addiction, and you can be addicted to lots of things besides just your drug of choice. And, my experience in the program is that most people are, in my opinion. And so that's why AA just kind of focuses on one drug. And so there are people in AA who feel like as long as they're sober from alcohol, they can do these other things and that they're still sober. In NA, you don't get that luxury, because anything you do that you're doing it against your will is an addiction. And so the same thing in CR, you can struggle with everyday living. You can struggle with anger, pride, whatever it is, and I think in reality, that is what we all do. So I like Celebrate Recovery better. The issue for me is that, NA and AA have been around so long and they're such popular programs. I need to go to meetings personally because, this is a feeling disease for me. And I dealt with my feelings through substances and acting out in behaviors that, inappropriate sexual relationships, anger, explosive temper, intolerance, and getting mad at people for not acting the way that I wanted them to. You don't have the luxury of sweeping that all under the rug just because you're abstinent from your drug of choice. And the goal of the 12 steps for me is character building. And so I have to be willing to work on other things. And if I am still chained to some of these other negative behaviors, for me, it stunts my growth. I can go in there and be happy and jump up and down because I've got X number of days or years clean from my drug of choice. But if I'm still acting out in these other behaviors, for me, I am not building my character. So and so it's a feeling disease, like I said. So I used these substances. That was my only tool. I had no coping skills. I started using as a teenager. So, as I got older, I I would make it through the week sometimes without using alcohol or marijuana or whatever it was. But then on the weekends, I was proud of myself. I said, I justified. That's what I do. I rationalize. Well, I didn't get drunk this week, so I'm off this weekend and I'm going to, weekend warrior it and get loaded. And then that's how I let my steam off. But then, for me, alcohol and other drugs, they mess with my headspace. So then I'm struggling to make it through the next week. And then I'm just waiting for Friday so I can get loaded again. And that's not character development for me. So if I'm working a program and working the steps, which, the steps are vital, they are the program as far as I'm concerned. For me, the program is learning the principles through the 12 steps, working the principles. They say it's not therapy, but for me, it's very therapeutic. I'm working the steps with someone who's experienced. They're helping me delve into my psyche and my past behavior and recognize these patterns of behavior that are detrimental to me and hurting the people around me, and making me painfully aware of them. And then when I get to the seventh step, then I am asking my God, the God of my understanding, to remove those character defects. And so it's necessary for me to have a relationship with that power, because in step one, I realize that I'm powerless over whatever it is, and that my life is unmanageable as a result of being powerless over that. So then in the step two, I'm told that, I realize that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. So for me, that's a way of thinking. That's okay. Making the same mistakes over and over again is insanity. So if I think that I can continue to get drunk on the weekends and that my life is going to be manageable, it's perspective. So for me, it's like, well, I'm working, I'm paying my bills, I have a car, I'm taking care of my family. So my life is manageable. But, if I'm using against my will, it took me years to realize that that is unmanageability. So this power greater than myself that I get a relationship with from spending time in prayer and meditation and reading the literature, that is giving me the strength because I'm powerless. But this power greater than myself is empowering me to do that power's will instead of mine, because obviously my will is to continue to use drugs and to get mad at people and yell and scream at them when I don't get my way, and maybe lie and cheat and have inappropriate relationships with women with whom I'm not married based on drugs and alcohol. That was my experience after my marriage ended. um, I decided that I was going to live it up, and these females that I was involved with were also addicts, and that made my life continue to be unmanageable and even more unmanageable in some cases. And so, that's not my higher power's will for me. And I don't have the power to not do that because I'm powerless. And so now that I have a relationship with a higher power and I'm spending time with that higher power, I'm getting the power to turn my will and my life over to the care of that higher power, which my higher power is the God of the Bible. And my higher power does not want me to use drugs and sex and food and porn and whatever else and young women who I'm taking advantage of. It doesn't want me to do that. And I don't have the power to do that. So I'm turning my will and my life over. So when the opportunity presents itself to do those types of things, that gives me the power to not do my will and do my higher power's will. And then in addition, I never really cared about myself because addiction for me is very selfish, self-centered disease. And I want what I want when I want it. And I wasn't thinking about other people. I was thinking about the ways and means to get more of whatever it is that I'm using to get outside of myself to stop feeling the way that I didn't like feeling. And so now, meetings for me, when I'm uncomfortable, when things are not going the way that I want them to, I have lost the desire to use, which is something that NA promises you that an addict, any addict, can lose the desire to use and find a new way to live. Well, this new way to live for me is I care about other people now. So I get involved in service and I start helping other addicts, and people call me when they're struggling. And so I'm living, I'm not self-centered. I'm learning to live for other people and helping other people and doing service for other people. And then now I feel like I have a sense of purpose in my life because I'm doing good things. Whereas before, when I was using, I didn't feel like I had a sense of purpose. I felt like I was trapped in that way of life and I was miserable. And the only relief that I could get from it was by using people, places, and things to get out of that feeling. And then I would feel bad about myself when I acted out. And then the only way I knew how to make myself feel better was to use people, places, and things to change the way I felt. And so it was a vicious cycle. And now I have found that new way to live. I'm not doing shady stuff. I'm not living dirty. So I don't feel bad about myself. So I don't feel like I have to use those things in order to feel better. And I'm learning to turn to my higher power, which is the God of my understanding, is the God of the Bible. And when I'm struggling with something and things aren't going my way, the serenity prayer sounds really silly. When I first got here, it was like, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Well, now when I am feeling restless, irritable, and discontent, I know that it's because I'm finding something unacceptable. And, what I have to realize is that if it's something that I can change, well, good. I need the courage to do it. If I'm feeling restless, irritable, and discontent because I'm not getting up and motivating to go do my responsibility, then I can motivate to do that. But if I am upset because, the government isn't acting the way I want to, or I didn't get something that I felt like I was supposed to get, and instead of in the old days, I would just be mad at that other person or mad about whatever it was. And then I would have to medicate myself to feel better. Eventually, that stopped working for me. It didn't feel better anymore. I just felt crappy when I woke up the next day. And I started the whole process over again of ways and means to get more drugs or sell more drugs or make money off of other people and take advantage of other people by selling them something that I knew was not my higher power's will for me to sell them so that I could make some money so that I could do some of that other stuff that I knew my higher power didn't want me to do. And I felt guilty about it. And so now that I'm not operating that way, I feel better about myself. I feel like I'm helping other people and I'm doing things that are worthwhile in my life. I'm seeing my life change. But even though I love NA and the principles that I'm learning in NA through the steps, I'm practicing them in my life. I really wish there were more meetings. That was what I originally was talking about. I need to go to meetings to get those uncomfortable feelings out so that I can lessen that pain and get, experience, strength, and hope from other people that have been where I'm at, and then they know I'm struggling, and then I have a network of people that reach out to me and that I can call when I'm struggling so that I don't go back to those old behavior patterns that are familiar to me that I've been doing for 35 years that are really easy to get back into. And that's what I did in early recovery before I was able to stay clean. When things got hard, it was a lot easier to just do those things again that used to make me feel good, but they stopped working. And so I was just miserable and sick and tired. And now I'm not living that way. So, even though I reset my clean date, it could have been a lot worse. I don't recommend that. But, God forbid you go back out and you do drugs and you die, or you get drunk and you get a DUI, or you wreck your car and you hurt somebody else, or total your car or whatever. So it could be worse. I'm seeing improvement. I went from using, you know, on the weekends to using almost every day to using once every 30 days. There are other things. The Sinclair method is naltrexone, which really helped me in early recovery to change my relationship with alcohol to the point where I no longer wanted alcohol. And I would always trick myself by drinking alcohol, and then I'd lose my inhibitions, and then I'd want another drug, and then I would not be able to stop myself. And so I'm drinking and driving and going and spending money that I don't have to put a substance in my body that is slowly killing me. And in some cases, nowadays there's so much junk, you know, you don't always get what you think you're going to get. And people are dying every day from buying a drug, and then it's got other drugs in it, and then they just die, and then they're done. They end themselves trying to do one more. And I don't want to do that. And I know that that's where alcohol leads. So I know I can never use successfully again. So I am learning a lot about myself, and I am learning how to use the tools of this program. And, as a result, I have almost really close in May. I'll have 2 years since I've gotten high or drank any or gotten drunk. And I have 6 months right now of being completely abstinent and clean, sober, working this program, helping other people again. I just want to celebrate that I have 6 months this week. I'm the kind of person that when I get to a milestone, I celebrate that whole week. Every meeting that I go to, I pick up my chip. That gives hope to the newcomer that, hey, 6 months is a long time when you're struggling to stay clean for one day. Giving them hope that, this program works. And, eventually, if there are more meetings available to me, I would like to transition into Celebrate Recovery. But, if it wasn't for the discipline of Narcotics Anonymous and learning to take suggestions and do what people who have experience, when I got here, I didn't know how to stay clean. So I got connected with the sponsor, and he knew how to stay clean, and he helped me learn how to stay clean, and I have had success doing that. And that's what a sponsor is all about. They help you through the steps, they teach you how to work this program, and then when you're struggling with something, you can reach out to them and they can give you experience, strength, and hope on their what they did in that same situation, or somebody that they know did, or they can find resources for you. Maybe their sponsor, my sponsor doesn't have kids. I have adult children. Well, his sponsor has kids, and some of the other people in the program have adult children. So, I was able to share experience with a woman who has a teenager right now. She's a single mom and she's struggling. Well, I was a single dad. My son isn't 14 now like her daughter, but my son was 14 at one time. And I have experience with teenagers who also struggle with self-will and self-control, and you know put my sobriety to the test, because that's what I always did. When my son got on my nerves, I rode up to the store and got me some alcohol and came home and drowned my feelings, and we got along a lot better. But then I felt like crap the next day, and I was mad at myself. And then he was dealing with the aftermath of me doing something that I didn't want to do. So, I was able to share experience, strength, and hope with her, let her know that, kids are going to act different than you want them to sometimes, and, show her what I do in certain situations and how it's gotten better for me as I've stayed clean. My son has started to respect me again, because he was scared to death. He didn't even know that the degree to which I was using, because I was hiding it from him, but he knew something was wrong. And then he knew I had a stroke. He knew I almost died. It scared the heck out of him, because if his dad dies, and he's a minor at the time, he was 16, he was scared to death. What's going on? What's my dad doing? And so now he's seen 2 years of me not using that way. He's seen my character change. He's seen me react differently to situations. And, me and him are tight. He's a 19-year-old knucklehead kid, and we butt heads sometimes, but my life is better and his life is better as a result of this program. And, the best thing that I can do for him, what's been on my heart from my higher power, is to keep doing this and stay clean and show him a positive view of what it's like to not live that way. Because I didn't have that modeled for me, and I had a lot of anxiety and stress, and I learned to deal with it by using drugs. And so being honest with him about where I came from, he has decided he doesn't want to go down that path. Now, I hope that that doesn't change, but I also know that, I'm not his higher power and I can't control what he does. And so, God forbid I ever have to deal with that, but at least I have the tools in this program if I ever have to deal with that, that hopefully I can deal with it clean. And that's the plan. So, anyway, this is Roberto signing off. And I just want to say that if you have any questions, if you need to be referred to some resources, I am available. You can send me an email. My personal email address is piaster67 at Hotmail, which is PIASTER 67 at hotmail.com. Making a comment on this video, I may or may not see it. But if you reach out to me on my personal email and you have a question, I will do my best to answer it. There's tons of resources available. There's meetings online for multiple fellowships. There's meeting lists for locally in your area. There's 12-step meetings everywhere in the world. So, the good news is that you never have to use again. This program does work. And, we're not infallible. We make mistakes sometimes, but we can make them clean instead of doing the same mistakes over and over again and trying to get different results. So, have a great day. And if you send me an email and you put mindset recovery or whatever in the subject line, I will respond to you. So, this is Roberto signing off, and have a great day.